We're introducing legislation to implement a national freeze on handgun ownership. What this means is that it will no longer be possible to buy, sell, transfer, or import handguns anywhere in Canada.
We know what works on this. It includes let's have an assault weapons ban.
A 9mm bullet blows the lung out of the body.
Like we talked about last week, the conversation has entirely devolved into guns and nothing else. Canada is going to pass or introduces a crazy strict gun law. Kamala Harris makes some comments that are very Kamala Harris-esque, and Joe Biden does the same. Joe Rogan speaks out with the whole gun issue. All that and more coming up on this episode of Daily Caller Live. My name is Jobob. Daily Caller Live starts right now.
2, 1.
Here we go.
Might be the only brown guy on earth named Jobob.
That is actually her name, Jobob.
Live from the dingy bunker, completely cut off from the outside world, except for you fine folks. My name is Jobob. This is Daily Caller Live. Thanks so much for tuning in on today. It is May 31st, the year of our Lord 2022. It is the last day of my month, APIDS month, whatever the heck that means. So bow down, peasants. It's my month, and I'm gonna milk it for all of the couple hours that I have left. You know what's going on in Canada? It's a little ridiculous. Oh, by the way, if you didn't get the API, it's like Asian American Pacific Islander month, and then there's some new acronyms that I don't really know what they are or what they mean, but that's the months for the different races of people are dumb and always have been dumb. So I'm making fun of it. To get to this first, holy moly, Justin Trudeau and the Canadian governorship, prime ministership, government. Let's start that over. Take two. Justin Trudeau has introduced a new bill that would basically outlaw pretty much all of the guns, I think, in Canada. We'll listen to him in just a second. And then we've got some pretty interesting statistics regarding guns in the country of Canada, our America's hat. Watch this from the Prime Minister, the same guy who tyrannically tried to make every single person vaccinated and then had a huge revolt from his people in the capital of Ottawa, in which we won't even get into that. I can go on a tirade and a rant about that. But this is the new tirade and rant that should be gone on with Justin Trudeau and his gun restrictions. Watch this from the Prime Minister.
We're introducing legislation to implement a national freeze on handgun ownership. What this means is that it will no longer be possible to buy, sell, transfer, or import handguns anywhere in Canada. In other words, we're capping the market for handguns. A further part of this new legislation, we're also fighting gun smuggling and trafficking by increasing maximum criminal penalties and providing more tools for law enforcement to investigate firearm crimes. And we'll require the permanent alteration of long gun magazines so they can never hold more than 5 rounds.
Holy cow.
These are actions that doctors, experts, and chiefs of police have been calling for years.
All right, I just want to stop really quick. Obviously, we'll get into discussion of all the gun things, and I've seen the comments coming in like crazy on these on what he's saying. But let me just point out really quick, what the heck is with all the masks? Why is everybody still wearing a freaking mask? The trust the science crowd. I can't get over that while I'm watching this, but all right, let's continue on with Justin.
And we're acting on their advice. I also want to thank the advocates, many of whom are here today, for your tireless efforts. I know that for too many of you, grief and loss are at the root of the work that you do. I want to recognize that, and on behalf of all Canadians, I want to thank you for your strength. Merci.
Okay, so let's see. There's a lot of comments that Claudia says Canada is the new Australia. Yeah, it seems like it. So if you missed the first part of that, Justin Trudeau is introducing a bill that would ban the sale, well, he said ownership of handguns, which would ban the sale, transport, and production of handguns in Canada. I can't imagine that'll go well. So let's just level set this here. This is a bill being introduced to the Canadian Parliament. I think that's how they work their government. It has not been passed yet, and I think there's a lot of people that doubt that it actually would get passed. But nevertheless, the Prime Minister of Canada is introducing it, so it should be taken seriously. Canadian Minister of Public Safety, Marco Mendicino, also said that a mandatory buyback program for assault-style weapons, which we'll talk about that a little bit later. Kamala Harris went on a screed about assault weapons. I don't know what the heck that is, but he's saying a buyback will go into effect later this year if the bill passes, calling on Canada's most significant action on guns in a generation. About 55,000 new handguns have been registered annually in Canada over the last decade. So 55,000, so 500,000 handguns. The question that I have for Justin, and the question that I have for everybody touting this, I've been going back and forth with people on Twitter and on Instagram because there's some things that people say that are so dumb that I just can't let it slide. I've been going back and forth with people asking, how do you do any of this? How do you, let's just say hypothetically, that the government could be trusted, which is a big freaking red flag there, and that guns and guns alone are the only cause of shootings, which is also not true. But let's just hypothetically, for example, say those things are true for the sake of argument. Then what? Justin, you have 500,000 new handguns that were registered in the last decade, not including the millions probably that have been in circulation. Because remember, Canada has a much smaller population than the United States. Not to mention all of the handguns that were already before that period of time where you're talking about here. What are you going to do with those guns? And when you say mandatory buybacks, who's going to be in charge of enforcing those mandatory rules? Is there going to be a police force that you're going to designate to go to people's homes to take their weapons from them? If so, who's going to be on that task force or on that police force? I can't imagine, one, the police, who generally speaking, at least in the United States, are a little bit more conservative and lenient with their gun rights and gun policy. Maybe that wasn't the case in Ottawa with the trucker protest, but generally speaking, police officers and law enforcement officers and military officials generally tend to be a little bit more lenient with gun laws and gun controls. And generally, when people talk about gun control, those are the people that are going, maybe not. So you're going to say those people are going to go into the homes of citizens and take their guns from them. You don't think that's a dangerous mission at all? You don't think that there's going to be some pretty big problems with people doing that? If we were to concede, which we can't, and it's just not true, if we were to concede that guns and guns alone are the problem, and that getting rid of guns would be the solution, and that we trust the government implicitly with the only people that could have firearms, if those things which aren't true were true, you still have this massive problem of who is going to do what you want. I don't currently know. Maybe there are out there. If you're a police officer and you would be willing to be the person going and knocking on the door and saying, hello, law-abiding citizen, I'm here to take your firearms. If you know who that police officer is, I would love to hear from them and hear their rationale. Because that is not a job that I don't think any of the police officer friends that I have would be willing to take. Speaking about gun laws, here is one Kamala Harris, the Vice President of the United States, somehow. What is an assault weapon / woman? I'm not sure she could define adequately either of those things, so I made a little joke and a little chyron here. Kamala Harris was getting on Air Force Two and decided to take some questions from a press gaggle, in which they asked about gun rights and gun laws. The biggest component, the biggest question that I have for every single person that's touting more gun control is, how do you freaking do it? Where are the specifics? What are the lines drawn? Because we've mentioned time and time and time again that the legislation and the president doesn't just get to pass a bill that says common sense gun reform. That's not how that works. You got to get very, very granular and very, very specific on what those laws actually mean. So unless you're willing to say what it is that you're trying to get past, you really don't have any sense in talking about things. I will throw in this disclaimer too. Last week, I made a big old stink about how the conversation continually devolves into strictly gun policy, and that's exactly what I'm doing here. So maybe I am the problem that I was espousing last week, saying, hey, the only thing anybody ever talks about is guns, and you immediately put one side on the defensive, and nobody ever talks about all of the other variables. I said that last week. I was very, very clear about that, and look, here I am now talking about the gun conversation, because that is the only thing that has taken up the media space. It's like 90% of the conversation is just guns. So unfortunately, there's no way around, getting around that. So we have to play and listen to clips like this from the vice president. This is the vice president talking about what she thinks is an immediate and clear solution. Now, does she get into specifics here? No. This is talking to a reporter outside of Air Force Two as she's about to get on and take off. The thing that I've been saying, and I don't want to sound like I'm repeating myself constantly, you need to get granular and specific. And when you do, that's when you have big problems regarding any sort of gun control legislation. Watch this from the vice president.
On the issue of gun violence, I will say, as I've said countless times, we are not sitting around waiting to figure out what the solution looks like. You know, we're not looking for a vaccine. We know what works on this. It includes, let's have an assault weapons ban. You know what an assault weapon is? You know how an assault weapon was designed? It was designed for a specific purpose: to kill a lot of human beings quickly. An assault weapon is a weapon of war with no place in a civil society.
Cool, Miss Vice President. What the heck is an assault weapon? There's really no clear definition that anybody agrees on. Now, there's a lot of people that have their own definitions, which people can poke holes in, and I've been poking holes in it on Twitter and on Instagram and on Facebook or wherever people are commenting for the last couple weeks. People have their own definitions, but nobody that I've seen seems to agree on what that definition is. So, Congress, Senate Democrats, Senate House members, if you want to craft legislation that you think is a specific, consistent definition of what assault weapons are and what high is in high-capacity magazines, if you'd like to do that, go for it. But I guarantee you, just like Senator Schumer did last week, punting on gun control, when you find out how those specifics are seen by the average American, when they actually look at the specifics and when they see what the government is then voting on, those things get harder and harder and harder to pass. And that's my main point here. This is a very, very difficult issue that for some reason, a bunch of your big-time lefties are continuing to push as if it's some easy, quick fix. I was trying to find this during that clip. This is a tweet from Charlie Kirk yesterday. Charlie, good dude. Thought this was funny. He said, notice how quickly the left went from hating cops to suddenly believing they should be the only ones with access to guns. Ha! That is a pretty dang good point. Remember the whole defund the police thing? Okay, so we need to defund the cops, but also they should be the only ones carrying guns. Maybe there are people out there that think nobody should ever have any sort of guns. That is fantasy land. I don't think those people exist in huge numbers, partly because we just sent $40 billion worth of guns to Ukraine. we'll leave that there. We won't talk about it currently, or right now. But again, the floofy idea of banning assault weapons, if we were to compromise on so many of the other true things that create problems with this sort of argument, you still have to define what that is. I think in this clip somewhere, she said, do you know what an assault weapon is? It's a weapon that is intended to kill people. Yeah, okay, correct. Weapons are designed to kill people. That's why people have guns, so that if they're under threat, they can kill people. Is that a difficult thing to know? I feel like the only reason you would have a gun is that if you were under threat from either a person or the government, you can kill them. That's the whole idea. So that's not a good definition for assault weapon either. I want to get to, actually, you know what? Let me talk about. Let's get to this. This Chiron is wrong here. But this is Joe Rogan, America's favorite podcaster. Joe Rogan is a huge 2A advocate. Now, he tends to lean pretty left on social issues, as many people do in the media. But at the same time, he's a reasonable person and has gotten a lot of heat for some recent comments. Some of those comments included him talking about gun control and the actual problem, which I've been talking about and a bunch of you have been talking about for the last several years, but the last week in particular after the Uvalde, Texas shooting. Listen to the world's most listened to podcaster about what he thinks is the actual problem. Check this out.
I wrote this thing once that I said this country has a mental health problem disguised as a gun problem. And that's what it is. There's so many guns. There's more guns than there are people. I don't think it's a gun situation. And I don't think you can change the fact that and I don't think it's wise to take the guns away from the people and leave all the power to the government. We see how they are even with an armed populace. They still have a tendency towards totalitarianism. And the more increased power and control you have over people, the easier it is for them to do what they do. And there's a natural inclination when you're a person in power to try to hold more power and acquire more power. And there's never an inclination to give more power back to the people, to give more freedoms back to the people. Freedoms lost are rarely regained.
That's another pretty dang good point. Let me get rid of this screen here. That's another pretty technical difficulties. It's a pretty dang good point, Joe. Freedoms lost are never regained. And also, look at what the government did, even with an armed populace. If you look at some places like New Zealand and Australia, they cracked down hard on the whole COVID thing the last 2 years and took away a lot of freedoms and made people wake up to realize, holy cow, the government can do that? So I don't know, just an interesting situation to be in that we have going on in our current political discourse. I wanted to get to this, and we'll talk about this more later this week. Joe Biden's got some problems within his own White House. There's a report that I'll get to maybe tomorrow or the next day about how Joe Biden feels about always being corrected by his own White House, walking back all of the statements that he says inaccurately when he's up at the podium and speaking off the cuff. We won't get to that entirely in its entirety today. Again, maybe we'll get to that more in the later this week. But I wanted to play this clip from the president where he misspeaks again. Like I've said a bajillion times, I can understand somebody misspeaking here and there. However, when a person is as old as the current president and misspeaks as often as he does, that's a different problem. And I don't really like attacking the president for his cognitive decline because that's a sad thing to see in people who get older. I don't want to see it happen to anybody that I know and love, and I don't want it to happen to me. Having said that, when you're the leader of the free world, the president of the United States, the commander-in-chief of the greatest military the world has ever seen, it becomes a problem. Here he is misstating something yet again, and doesn't make his case very well. Watch this.
And they showed me a X-ray. He said a 22 caliber bullet will lodge in a lung, and we can probably get it out, may be able to get it and save the life. A 9mm bullet blows the lung out of the body. So the idea of these high caliber weapons is there's simply no rational basis for it in terms of about self-protection, hunting. Remember, the Constitution, the Second Amendment, was never absolute.
Okay. Wow, I actually hadn't heard that last part. The Constitution, the Second Amendment was never absolute. I wonder what he means by that. I wonder if he'll clarify that. But the misstatement, obviously, is Joe Biden saying a 9mm gun will blow your lung right out of your body. If anybody has ever shot a 9mm gun, it is barely a step above a BB gun, or as the joke goes. 9mm guns are not going to blow the lung out of your body. It definitely can inflict some damage. But again, the president making some comments. I want to get back and see what this Secret Service guy, what does he do? What's his reaction? Let's watch this again. Sorry if you're just listening to the audio part, but I'm curious. Let's watch the Secret Service guy and see what his reaction is as when Joe Biden says a 9mm gun can blow a lung out of your body.
May be able to get it and save the life. A 9mm bullet blows the lung out of the body. So the idea of these high caliber weapons is there's simply no rational.
Good in the sense of he didn't react. I almost expected in rewatching it that the Secret Service guy, a 9mm bullet could blow the gun right out of the body. He would go, what? But he didn't. Good Secret Service guy right there. I don't know who that guy is, but he deserves a medal for not laughing hysterically when the president made a ridiculous freaking comment. Let's see if there's any comments that we can get to. Will not be infringed means is absolute, Joe. Yeah, because at the very end, I hadn't heard that part of the clip just yet, but he said the Second Amendment in the Constitution was never meant to be absolute. Yeah, what the heck was that? Wait, what? No, that's shall not be infringed. Good point, John. That's another big thing. Maybe we'll dig into that and see if the White House walks that back. I'm in a weird position of like this show, or at least my idea of this show, was meant to kind of poke fun at things that are going on, and we still do that. But things have gotten so out of whack and crazy that some of the crazy rhetoric you hear out of the White House and out of the legislature and out of your politicians in general is so nuts and actually has so much power. It's hard to not take them seriously, regardless of how ridiculous they may sound. So, I don't know. Just kind of a thought that I've had the last couple days. It hasn't been the lighthearted show that it has been or was intended to be. So if that's why you tune in, I appreciate it. Hopefully we'll get back to times where we can just make fun of things, make fun of ideas and the way that people espouse those ideas. I know it's gotten a little bit serious and a little bit heavy, so appreciate you sticking around during that entire process. But that's going to do it for us today. Appreciate you tuning in each and every morning. If you haven't already, give me a follow on any of your social media accounts. Just type in JOBOB if you're listening to this, or if you're on the YouTube stream or the Facebook stream, wherever it is that you're watching this. Type in JOBOB. You can give me a follow on any of your social media platforms: Twitter, Getter, YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, Truth Social, Ibble. All of the social media things, paparazzi. I'm trying to think of any of those that I haven't named yet. I'm probably missing a big one. But you can follow me there. Send me stuff, whatever it is that you think is important talking about, and we can have a conversation offline on any of those social media platforms. That is going to do it for us today. We've got an interesting week. Tomorrow night, if you're a fan of Tim Pool, I'll be on the Tim Pool in real life, IRL, podcast tomorrow evening in DC, then in Dallas the next couple days after that with TPUSA. So it's going to be a little bit chaotic, but we'll make sure to try and keep things consistent as much as possible here, which may result in taking Thursday and Friday off, depending on how chaotic and hectic things are. But without further ado, we're going to end. With all of that, I appreciate all you tuning in, sticking around, and enjoying your morning with us here at the Daily Caller. See you tomorrow, same time, same place. God bless America.